In the late 2000s, Cartoon Network was a shell of its former self. Disney and Nickelodeon dominated the TV scene with shows like iCarly and Hannah Montana, and CN, wanting a little bit of that live action, decided to roll out their own programming block called CN Rio. Ultimately, it was a disaster because a channel called Cartoon Network wasn't even showing cartoons anymore, but quietly under the hood, the building blocks of the next cartoon renaissance was slowly emerging with this little show called Flapjack. Once CN executives realized the failure, they looked to this show and used it as a catalyst to greenlight a number of niche cartoon pilot pitches that ultimately led to the 2010s revival of Cartoon Network, and more importantly for us, the topic of this video. When we talk about horror on the Cartoon Network channel, people talk about the really big horror shows. Courage the Cowardly Dog, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and even really niche shows like Over the Garden Wall, and this wouldn't exactly be niche, but Gravity Falls even, which I actually want to make a video on. And these shows are good in their own right. They deserve that praise and they deserve that appreciation, but I think the really popular 2010 shows were just as terrifying as these older and more niche shows, even if they're necessarily in the horror genre. I think the way that these shows interwove horror elements into their existing narratives was very ahead of their time, and they did it on a public channel with kids watching it. But that's what I wanted to talk about today, not the really niche shows, but the horror inside the really popular shows. And if we're talking about popular 2010s cartoons, we can only talk about the big three: Regular Show, The Amazing World of Gumball, and of course, Adventure Time. These shows were the most popular of that time and even continues to show its influence to this day in the 2020s as well. So what I'm going to do is do some research around the general horror elements of each show, its influence, and as an extra little kicker, I'm going to include one episode as an example that I personally think suits the show's best case of their horror elements. Oh, hello there. Welcome to my little creep corner. I got a little corner here with my bookshelf and my little plants and my lamp that you can't see. It's over there. But yeah, I got my notes here with all my notes. I got my journal here with all my notes. There we go. So let's get started. For the first show that I watched, that was Regular Show. Regular Show I actually had the least amount of experience with because I didn't watch it too much growing up. I watched one-off episodes here and there on Cartoon Network or watched it on the Cartoon Network website, which was actually quite cool because I played a lot of it, not video games, but I played a lot of online games on them, Flash games. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, Regular Show I didn't watch that much, so I was kind of pretty excited going in because I knew it had horror elements, but I didn't know what kind of horror elements it had. But just to give a brief explanation or synopsis of Regular Show, let me get my book over here, my little journal with little flowers on it. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty cool, I think. It's my little journal. If this thing falls on me and I die, I guess I'll get it on camera, but holy shit, I don't want to die, bro. Relax. The Regular Show was created by J.G. Quintel, and the characters in Regular Show was loosely based on his short films that he did at the California Institute of Arts. So he was pretty good artist, and he went to college for it as well. Regular Show has its influences in 80s horror movies, especially slashers and body horror movies. So think movies like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm reading off my journal here. Evil Dead even, actually. And for body horror movies, think movies like The Thing or The Fly. I think this show has the most tame horror in my own personal opinion, because I personally don't really find slashers scary. I think they're more funny or maybe even more campy, but I do think that some slashers, especially Halloween and Friday the 13th, have very unrelenting protagonists, and I think Regular Show actually kind of mirrors the good parts of a slasher. But the episode I chose for Regular Show was Hello Governor. Hello Governor. Can I get a bottle of water? I can't do a British accent, I'm so sorry. I chose Hello Governor because it has a lot of those tropes that I was talking about with slasher movies, and it also uses a lot of normal horror movie tropes as well. Like, there's a lot of references to The Shining in that episode, actually, with the typewriter, and even has references to Halloween, where the car hides behind the tree and then like slowly stalks, to specifically look at the influences of this particular episode, I think it has influences in obviously car horror movies, where the car is the antagonist of the entire movie. Think movies like Christine, and a little bit more niche, which I dug up a little bit. I Bought a Vampire Motorcycle. That movie was specifically British, and it has vehicle-based horror, but it's British, and a lot of the tones in that movie was also present in the episode as well, from my research. Overall, for that episode, let me get my notes here. I think I gave that episode a 7 out of 10 for like how scary it was, because at the end of the day, slasher movies aren't that scary to me, and I think to a lot of people, at least maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think the slasher movie is that scary. So this episode didn't really scare me that much, but I do respect the influence and obviously the antagonist and all the work that goes into those movies and the show as well, and I wanted to analyze that specifically. Me when I'm covering all my bases because I don't want to make anyone angry. To talk about the next show, The Amazing World of Gumball, I wanted to talk about that show. The Amazing World of Gumball is actually the show I have the most experience in. I used to watch it a lot. I immediately messed with it as soon as I saw the first couple of episodes on, I believe, live television a very long time ago. I think like 2013, 2014. Back when me and my family had cable television, I used to stay up or actually wake up to watch it in the mornings because they did reruns of the show in the morning, not in the evening. It is actually very dear to my heart because it's one of the first few shows that I actually messed with as a middle schooler, because I like shows but I didn't really like cartoons back then except like Ben 10. So this was the first show that I actually messed with as, I guess, a teenager. Just to give a quick synopsis on the show as well. The Amazing World of Gumball was created by Ben Bocklet? I'm sorry, I don't know. I mean, that guy's not gonna watch this video, but still, I'm sorry for butchering that name. The characters in this show were also based on rejected characters that he made for commercials back in the day. So a lot of characters being reused from old work. That's pretty cool, actually. But for the specific horror influences, there's not specific movies or media that it takes from. It takes from a lot of more so genres, if anything, or more so conceptual ideas. For example, this show uses a lot of meta horror, so a lot of fourth wall breaking, right? And I guess a specific example for that type of horror would be The Truman Show, because that does a lot of meta horror in that and a lot of fourth wall breaking. And while The Truman Show isn't entirely like a horror movie, I think a lot of people do consider a horror movie, but it's not like a traditional horror movie. And I think that's kind of the same way with Gumball as well. I think another type of more so creepy element or something that adds to the horror of the show would be that a lot of the characters use mixed media, and that adds to the uncanny valley effect of the entire show. You have many characters animated in 3D, and then you have characters animated in 2D, and you have some characters that are like puppets, and you have characters that aren't even like cartoons anymore. They're real life. Like, they're just real life people out there. Like Susie's literally just a chin, just a real life chin with eyes, googly eyes on it. And for the mixed media, I think a very big influence, I would imagine, would be the band Gorillaz. They play around with a lot of mixed media, and I'm sure that had its influence in the show as well. Essentially, for this show, the influences are everywhere. There's not one genre that it takes from everything. But to choose an episode for this show, I am going to choose The Signal, which might be a controversial opinion actually. There's a lot of other scarier episodes actually in that show, but I think the episode that actually best encapsulates the type of horror that this show primarily engages in, I think that episode would be best, because The Signal is essentially glitches happening in real life. The episode essentially starts with TV signals being weak all over Elmore, and you start seeing glitches in their world, and Gumball realizes that, and you start seeing glitches when he talks, or glitches when Darwin goes to work out and he gets his shit rocked. Throughout the episode, you see all these different types of glitches happening in their everyday life, and you see, there are shenanigans and it's funny, all that stuff, but towards the end, you realize that Gumball has his realization that he is being affected by the TV signal, and then he comes to the conclusion that, oh my god, he is in TV, he's on TV. And the last shot of the entire episode is just them looking uncomfortably into the camera, and you realize, oh my god, when you really think about it, imagine coming to the realization that you're on TV. For the actual episode scares, it's not too scary, but I think conceptually that's where this episode's strength lies, and that's why I wanted to choose this episode as the best encapsulation of the show's horror elements. But yeah, that's a pretty cool show. Next show I want to talk about the last show. Honestly, I wanted to save this for last because this show has probably the best horror, not just in cartoons, but just in general. Adventure Time. Adventure Time was created by Pendleton Ward, and once again, the show was based off of his 2001 short film. Is it 2001? No, 2007. I can't read. It was based on his 2007 short film, and he actually got featured on Nicktoons, which is Nickelodeon, and they said, nah, son, I don't want this. So Cartoon Network swooped him right up and made it into their show. I could talk about Adventure Time for a very long time, but we are focusing on the horror of the show. Adventure Time has its horror influences in cosmic horror and post-apocalyptic dread. And when you say cosmic horror, you can only think of one man, H.P. Lovecraft. The Adventure Time lore has very much a very Lovecraftian feel to it, as it has all these entities. For example, the Lich, the Gulp, the Orgalog, and the entire monologue that the Lich has, where there were monsters before time even existed, and before there was light, there was only darkness, and before that, there was only monsters. I think that's what makes Adventure Time so scary. It's not the specific individual episodes, but the overall world that they're in. This is a world actually ravaged by atomic warfare. There was literally atom bombs dropped everywhere, and you can see that in the intro of the entire show. The first frame you see is an atom bomb, and in the entire show you can see remnants of the old human world, but you don't see any humans. I think a large part of what makes Adventure Time so scary isn't the individual episodes or even the characters, or hell, even the cosmic horror, which adds to it, but I think what makes Adventure Time really scary is the fact that there's human elements all around, but there are no humans around to use those human elements. But the episode choice that I chose for this show was The Creeps. I think this episode encapsulates what makes Adventure Time so scary, because it places you in the middle of an event where Finn and Jake are going to a murder mystery at a random ass mansion, and you go there and you see all these characters with PB, Cinnamon Bun, and Lumpy Princess as well, and you see events transpire and you don't know why, and there's a lot of elements in it where it actually incorporates traditional horror elements as well, with like ghosts going around. I actually specifically chose this episode because there's a lot of other episodes I could have chosen. I chose this particular episode because of merely one shot in that entire episode. It's this one. That moment is so surreal, where Finn literally being driven mad by everything going around him, he goes into a room and he sees this thing, and you hear the weird warbling effects, and you see this literal ghost creature coming out, and then Jake reveals, hey, this is all a prank. Nothing happened, you're good, no one died, nothing happened. And then Finn's like, oh, that was really good. I even liked the green monster that you showed up, and all the chairs blowing up, and the floorboards breaking, and Jake is like, I didn't do that. What are you talking about? I did not do that. And Finn just gets reminded of it again, and he's just like, let me put it in my vault. And then he never speaks of it again until later in the season. When I first watched it with no context as like a kid, I'm pretty sure I had nightmares for days, because what the hell is this thing? I think that's what Adventure Time does best. It gives really good surrealist imagery in a broader context of a world ravaged after atomic wars. And there are a lot of other episodes that come up to this level as well, but I think for me personally, this is the episode I chose purely because of that one moment. I'm gonna turn this light up because I want to have kind of like creepy lighting for this. There's gonna be so much grain on this, but it's okay. It's completely okay, because it's an artistic decision. It's an artistic decision that I want to have grain on this video. It's not because my camera's shitty. It's because it's an artistic decision. Wow, I think it's struggling to focus. That's great. So I grew up with Cartoon Network as my favorite channel. I didn't like Disney. I didn't like Nickelodeon. Fuck iCarly. Fuck Hannah Montana. I'm sorry, I didn't grow up for it. No, that's not okay. No, maybe not fuck them. But I didn't enjoy those shows. I like Cartoon Network. And as I got older, I started to get into like internet horror and like looking at creepypastas and like short films on YouTube, and Cartoon Network somehow still stuck with me through that phase as well, because it kind of adapted to it. All three shows that I'm talking about, they kind of grew up alongside me, and the horror in those shows reflected the horror sensibilities I had as well. And I think especially Gumball did that, because there's this particular creepypasta that I really liked that was Gumball based called The Grieving. I wanted to do like a little twist, a little trick up my sleeve and be like, yeah, the episode I chose for The Amazing World of Gumball was The Grieving. I think if I did that, I would have probably got my ass handed to me in the comments, so I didn't do that, and I actually chose an episode that's in the show. But The Grieving, that creepypasta was super creepy, and it's like one of the first creepypastas that I actually liked, and it got me into internet horror and like made me delve into other creepypastas and like ARGs and like different type of horror genres in the internet, and like the SCP Foundation, backroom stuff, like everything. And all of that started because of that one creepypasta in this one show I liked on Cartoon Network. But I think a lot of people underestimate what Cartoon Network was in the 2010s because they look so fondly on the era before that, the 2000s. And don't get me wrong, the 2000s had some bangers. I really like Courage as well, and I like Ben 10 and all those shows because I also grew up with those shows. But I think as I got older in middle school and high school, I still like Cartoon Network because of the big three. I love those shows too. So even though I have appreciation for the 2000s, I also had just as much appreciation for the 2010s as well, because of these shows that I just talked about for however long I talked about, I think like 20 minutes. I think nostalgia continues to blind us by keeping us stuck to the past. There are great shows and even great horror coming out right underneath our noses in all types of platforms like YouTube, Netflix, Hulu. And while these, streaming platforms aren't entirely like the best corporations, the people working on the shows on these platforms are pretty good people. They're creatives, they're directors, they're cinematographers that I really like, that I probably wouldn't have found if I just kept saying, oh, but look at this thing that happened 10 years ago, or look at this thing that happened 20 years ago. You gotta keep looking, you gotta keep your eyes out, you gotta keep essentially searching in the present for good horror or good TV shows that will happen in the future. Instead of saying, oh, that was a really great filmmaker, you have to say, oh, this is a good filmmaker right now. They're making great shows, they're making great horror, they're making great whatever, right? I think the only way we will have this awareness of, oh yeah, this is a really good show, is by saying, okay, yes, these shows were really good in the past, but these shows are just as good because of this and this. That's the end of the video. I hope you liked the creep corner. I don't want to call it that. Why am I calling it that? Am I the creep, or is this the creepy thing? Like, is it the setting? Is it me? Or is it the things I'm talking about? These are questions that will never be answered. But yeah, have a good day. My camera's about to run out of charge. I hope my focus, if I look at the camera and the focus did not work the entire time, I'm gonna fucking actually break that lens.